Once there was a man living in a time of fascism, oppression, racism, sexism, and technological changes. He bravely spoke of goodness and God and human flourishing. The year, it was not 2023. The year was 1971. And the man is Jürgen Moltmann and his Theology of Play this week on Board Game Faith, the bi-weekly podcast on the intersection of religion, spirituality, and board games. Before we get to Moltmann's struggle for theology of play, Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about our awesome contest?
I would love to talk about our awesome contest, Kevin. And by the way, my name is Daniel, and your name is?
Daniel Kevin.
Daniel Kevin. And I'm
hyphenating. I'm Daniel Kevin.
I'm Kevin Daniel. That's not confusing at all. But or you can just call me Daniel and Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
But we are grateful to have everybody listening in today. Thanks for tuning in on this episode about Jürgen Moltmann. We are going to first though talk about this contest that we're having on Instagram. We have reached the milestone of 1,000 followers, and we're so excited and grateful for all of our wonderful followers on Instagram. And if you're not following us, you can find us at just look up Board Game Faith on Instagram. And so to celebrate that, we're having this contest where we're asking folks to post a picture of themselves with their favorite games in a place of worship. In their place of worship, could be a mosque, a synagogue, a temple, a church, or some other holy place like outside or whatever is holy or sacred for you. And then to post that to Instagram with the hashtag BoardGameFaith. That's how we are able to find you if you include that hashtag, please. And then we're going to, at the end of June, we're going to be drawing randomly to see who the winners are. And we got some really neat prizes. We have a Board Game Faith coffee mug that we're going to be giving away. We have a brand new, we're calling it our Board Game Faith Celebration t-shirt. This is a brand new t-shirt, different from the one that I'm wearing right now. It's kind of more of like a collegiate athletic sort of look, because we're trying to look more sporty, Kevin, and and so it's kind of a heather gray thing with our logo, kind of askew, and surrounded by our motto, board games are good for the soul, but in two different languages, in Urdu, the native language of a good friend of the podcast, Ali Karar, who has been on the podcast to speak about board games and Islam, and then in Japanese, the native language of Ono Takuya-san, who has also been in our podcast to speak about Buddhism and board games. And so, we're going to be giving those away. And the grand prize, in addition to a t-shirt, that person will get to help record the intro to our episode and to help us plan an episode as well. So please, time is running out. We're going to at the end of June.
1 week left. If you're listening to this when it first drops.
Yep. So we would love to have you post and enter the contest. It would be great.
If this is our Martian overlords who have conquered and going through the data in 40 years, I was always on your side. I just want to tell you that.
That's exactly right. I can attest, even offline, Kevin has told me this. So
always
he has
been positive alien invasion. Yes,
he'll text me in the middle of the night and say, "Daniel, I love the Martians," and
I love the Martians.
And I'll text back and say, "I know, Kevin. We need to get some sleep now." That's right.
I will never put tinfoil on my head because I want them to find me. Yes, and also don't forget to like and subscribe to us here. We are on YouTube, and we're a traditional podcast, so you may be listening to the audio version on the podcast player of your choice, or you may be checking this out on YouTube with the video and the audio. So wherever we are, give us a like, a review, a thumbs up, and we have a newsletter. And you can subscribe to boardgamefaith.com. Go to there and subscribe to our newsletter. Also, we request after doing all those items, if you'll wash Daniel's car and trim my hedges, we would appreciate it. So, Daniel,
that's bonus.
That's a bonus.
That's bonus.
It's like a game.
It is.
See, yes. So, Daniel, Jürgen. How's your German?
Jürgen Moltmann. My German's
Moltmann.
It's not as good as my son's, but yes, I can. So
Tell
who
us
is
a little
Jürgen
about-
Moltmann?
We'll just keep it American and say Moltmann. Moltmann.
Yeah.
Moltmann. Tell us a little bit about him.
Yes, well, Jürgen Moltmann was born in 1926, and he is still alive, which was a surprise, I think, for both you and me in preparation for this episode. I know when I was in seminary a long, long time ago, and probably you too, Kevin, we learned about Moltmann along with the names of other theologians who have long ago passed away, but Moltmann is still alive, and how wonderful is that? He's
almost 100 years old.
Almost 100 years old. A German Reformed theologian who's a professor emeritus of systematic theology at the University of Tübingen in Germany. Side note,
Tübingen.
I've mentioned in the past that I have some German Mennonite relatives. When I have visited them in the Stuttgart area of Germany, I remember noticing Jürgen Moltmann theology books on their bookshelves, even though neither of them are theologians by profession. They were very interested in his work. He's known for such books as The Theology of Hope, The Crucified God, and God in Creation.
Of course, the one I have is not one that I guess is one of the more famous ones, but The Experiment Hope.
The Experiment Hope.
I've read it, but I'll read it.
That's okay. There's many I haven't read either. Jürgen Moltmann was drafted in 1943 to fight for Nazi Germany in World War II. He surrendered in 1945, was a prisoner of war in Belgium, became a Christian, converted to Christianity, and then was a prisoner of war in Scotland and England. He went home in 1948, earned a doctorate from the University of Göttingen in 1952, and then went on to be a pastor and a professor, and a prolific author, and a significant theological voice in the conversation of how Christianity intersects with the world still today.
I think it's just amazing that this poor young kid in a POW camp ends up becoming this academic and theological giant. Like, who knew that?
Yeah.
That sort of, it was the kindness of chaplains and others who were reaching out to him that led him to make a huge career and life choice.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not very familiar with the story of his conversion experience, but I would be interested to find out more about that sometime, and just kind of what that journey,
because I don't think he
looked
grew
like
up very
for him.
religious.
Right.
The very brief reading I did, it was really fighting in a war that evidently he really didn't want to fight in, and but also living with the pain of the post-war period for Germany.
Yeah.
So led him to become a deeply convicted Christian and thinker.
Yeah, yeah. So, one of the books that Jürgen Moltmann went on to write is this one that we're considering today, A Theology of Play. Mm-hmm. Right, Kevin? And you said he wrote that, in 1971?
1971, too?
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's 1971. This is the only significant writing of these are all difficult categories, but in terms of sort of a canonical theologian, someone who's had a wide influence, and that's always up for debate, who's among that. But
right,
regardless, he's one of the main ones to write about play. Is that fair?
Yeah,
or to have a single volume. I mean, there may be others that have occasionally had a chapter or two or a couple of paragraphs, but
right. No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, you don't. I think about the other authors that I like to read. We don't have, or that I know are significant. There aren't works about the value of play from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, though he does talk about it in some places, or more contemporarily, Barbara Brown Taylor or Thomas Merton or Martin Luther King Jr. or any of these folks, they don't it's not a very common subject. In fact, for a while there, Kevin, I know when you and I were first getting into this research for Theology of Play, I think kind of jokingly referred to it as kind of the holy grail of books on theology of play, because it was so hard to find. It's out of print, but you were able to find a copy. So
Pfeiffer University had a copy in the library. So if you're curious to read this for yourself, you might check out a local library, a university library, which sometimes is open to the public, or you may be able to get borrowing rights if you live in the community, or if not, you probably can just get in there and read it there at the library. It's a hard work, but it's actually not that long. It's a little deceiving, I think, the book itself, because it's actually 3 different kind of long essays. Is that fair?
Yeah,
and so it's like they cobbled together this thing for publication. And I don't know what the publication was like in Germany, but in English, this is the English translation.
Right.
The Klingon version is really good, though. It really has a lot to it.
It is. They have trouble translating the word for giddiness, though. There's not much of a Klingon sense of giddiness. But
I know they had a footnote there about it, which was useful.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't feel like you're reading a systematic theology, which is not a complaint. I've never been much of a systematic theology guy myself in terms of how my brain is wired. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just I personally don't mind that it's not a systematic theology, but it's a dense work. We were talking about this before starting recording. Kevin, I was sharing with you, what I find challenging about reading it is I'll read I've had to read it several times, but I'll read like these multiple paragraphs where I finally feel like I get his argument or what he's saying. And then after all that, I finally realize that he's constructing this argument just to reject it, just to say that it's wrong. And it doesn't he doesn't have those kind of verbal clues like we might have maybe in more modern scholarship or writings, where he'll say something like, no, I don't really believe this, but here's what my opponents say, or things like that. He doesn't really give us those kind of textual markers to let us know that he's delving into something that he disagrees with, and it's not till the end of the section where he says, but this is why it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I had the same frustration too. It's from 50 years ago, and some of the fights and arguments he's picking, he's not seen the Berlin Wall fall. He's not seen the collapse of the USSR. So he's still thinking in terms of Cold War, and he's thinking in terms of it's hard to get your head around his concerns, because they are different, and he speaks about them indirectly.
Yeah.
So we're just looking at pages 1 to 14, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we'll have a follow-up. So this is book club. Surprise, suckers.
Book club.
Book club with occasional microphone scratching.
Yeah.
My name is Moltmann.
Wiggy wiggy. Can you give me a bolt, man? That's horrible. I don't even know what that means.
I think, and so whether you read this or not, or have read it, here's our attempt at an outline of what's going on in these first 14 pages. I think, Daniel, one thing to highlight in the first part of this, his first question is it moral to play games in a hurting world?
Yep.
So he's starting it from a place of compassion, that there are people out there that are suffering from war, famine, disease. Shouldn't we be either working to end those problems, address them, or should we at least refrain from doing something that is fun?
Right.
So given the problems of the world, is it right to do something silly like playing games and having joy and laughter? It's almost like a weird Puritan question. Why would you waste your time being frivolous? You should be busy. It's the kind of thing John Wesley would have said. I think he was against gaming, correct? Because it's frivolous. You could be knitting or crocheting or building a ramp or studying religious poetry or something like that. But ultimately, Moltmann's going to push against that. And one basis he has is Psalm 126, which says, "When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter." And Psalms are in the Christian and Hebrew Bible. And so here there's a place for, in the midst of joy, to laugh. And it seems like he's wanting to connect happiness, joy, and laughter and freedom. Because in that verse is when the people of Israel get to be free in Zion. Does that seem fair to you?
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent summary. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think he really gets it in the very, really just the first few pages, this moral dilemma, this conundrum that I think a lot of people feel around play and gaming. In some ways, almost kind of the world outside of gamers is maybe feel it even a little bit more, which is just exactly what you said. That just seems in bad taste or tone deaf or just insensitive to devote a portion of our lives to play and fun and games when there is so much suffering and hurt in the world, right? And you're right. So he's trying to move us toward that wonderful Psalm that you mentioned, 126, and he contrasts it with kind of the question asked in Psalm 137. Psalm 137 begins by saying, how can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? This psalm that was written in what's known as the Babylonian captivity, when people were when Israelites were taken from the homeland and forced to live in this faraway land of Babylon. And they're saying, like, how can we rejoice when we're in when we're in captivity, when we're in exile? How can we sing? How can we be happy? How can we play? And you're exactly right. He really lifts that up. And I feel like that's such an important question that I think anyone who's wrestling with play and games and theology and spirituality and religion has to ask at some point. Because if we don't ask it, certainly the world will ask it of us. I know I have kind of encountered that when I have talked sometimes in some circles about the importance of play and games. There's sometimes this spoken pushback, sometimes unspoken pushback. Like, well, really? Like, there are so many more important things you could be talking about, so many more important things you could be doing to be making the world a better place right now. Mm-hmm. You could be like, again, all of what you've been pointing out, relieving suffering, relieving hunger, trying to dismantle racism, or, and you're just playing, how that's pretty self-indulgent of you, So he really begins with that contrast. Yeah.
Yeah. He's picking up, there's a quote here. He says these sketches, he's meaning these succeeding pages, I guess he's kind of admitting it's a sketch of an idea. These sketches seek to reassert the value of aesthetic joy, so the joy and beauty and happiness and of enjoying play, really, against the absolute claims of ethics, which I take to mean, well, you ought to be doing something about this. You ought to be fixing the environment. You ought to be pressure washing your deck, right? So you're a bad person if you don't do it. It's a very Lutheran type notion of these claims are absolute, and that's the law. Right. And against that, he's picking up, and even though he himself, I think, is more Calvinist, and these are kind of schools of thought within Protestant theology coming from some of the leading Protestant voices. But here he's sounding a little more like Luther, I think, which is we're supposed to be about grace and joy and freedom and not about thou shalt. You must. Which is a sense of being judged and evaluated. You're a bad person if you don't if you're not always about doing good.
Exactly.
And he's saying, no, that's not really who we are. We're not about doing. We're about being free creatures.
Yeah, yeah. which interestingly enough, I think, interestingly for me at least, translates into a position of critique and criticism from Moltmann toward both the right and the left. And I find that so interesting in this, in our polarized world today. Especially here in the United States, such high polarization between the right and the left. Even though this is 50 years ago, there's something almost kind of refreshing about that. That a voice that says, you know what, neither the right nor the left really has got this. That seeing them ultimately, and also he critiques political movements and theological movements on the right and the left, both as well. He says that ultimately they both can kind of arrive at the same place. They both end up at the same place, which is what you're talking about, Kevin. This sense of the absolute demands of their own ethical system, right? And I find that fascinating. He finds that there's in his mind really kind of not much hope for a movement toward authentic freedom and being authentically human from either the right or the left, or from any kind of political revolution or theological reformation, but ultimately it's just in the sense of play, I find that very refreshing in our day and age.
Yeah. And so our human identity is not about movements or isms or political identities. It's to be identified in this phrase from an 18th century German poet named Herder, who said that human beings are the first liberated being in creation, that we're the first beings that, and I guess by this, he's saying we are the first ones that have knowledge and can plan our own freedom.
Right.
So, and I don't know if the first means in terms of thinking about the creation story that's told in the Bible, like we're or he's just thinking in terms of mental growth, that we have the mental ability to be self-conscious and self-aware, or he's thinking in terms of redemption, that because we've been, as Christians, from a Christian point of view, we've been redeemed by Christ, so that makes us liberated in the sense of we're both sinners and forgiven.
Right.
So I don't know enough about Herder or Moltmann here to know what they mean by first, but I think it's this idea of anticipation, that we're supposed to be truly human, and we should be free, and freedom enjoys joy and laughter, and not,
Right.
Now that you've waxed my car, wax it again, right?
Right. That strict kind of ethicism is ethicism a word? I don't know. Anyway, is
Ethicicism.
Ethicicism. That strict ethicicism.
See anemone.
Is something that is arrived at from either political perspective. Yeah, it's just it's
right.
Whether you gotta make sure to follow these rules that the right says, or you got to make sure to follow the rules that the left says. But either way, it's
they
not
both
following
have rules that tell you you're a good or bad person.
Right.
The judge.
Right. So in response to this critique that you really are ignoring, or is it right to play in light of the suffering of the world? So that's so Moltmann says in part, that this isn't about. Well, he says it's not about ignoring the suffering, right? It's about transforming the suffering. That he has this point where he says early on, I'm not writing this book for you all who ignore the suffering of the world, who look at the world through pink colored glasses and think rose colored glasses and think that there's no suffering in the world. He says, I'm writing this book for people who are feeling so overwhelmed by the suffering of the world that they're kind of on the edge of despair, and
right.
So that's who I'm writing for. I'm writing for this book for people who know the suffering of the world very, very well.
Yeah, and you had a great comment there that someone told you about an attitude towards suffering and misery. You were sharing that before. Share that again.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I had encountered this in a couple different places, but this sense that if it relieved the suffering of the world for me to commit myself to a life of miserableness, then yes, go ahead, commit yourself to a life of miserableness if it relieves the suffering of others. But the truth is, it doesn't work that way, right? That my commitment, my committing myself, if I chose to do that, to a life of being miserable, will in no way relieve the suffering of other people. In fact, it'll probably contribute to the overall sense of suffering and miserableness in the world, because
so good.
Whatever miserableness we have in our
Such a
hearts has a way of So go ahead.
I've got two thoughts. No, you finish yours, then I'm going to follow up.
Well, I guess even in kind of a very scientific sense, or maybe not very scientific sense, but physical sense, that every family, I think, if you expand your circle large enough, deals with some sort of chronic health conditions, and our family is no different. We have chronic health conditions in our family circle, and I remember, at one point when we were consulting with doctors and medical teams on that, they said that too. If it would help this chronic health condition for you to feel bad about it, to worry about it, whatever, go for it. But it's not. What's going to make it better is live a full and joyful life, and find good ways of managing it. I mean, don't ignore it, take it seriously, but couple that taking it seriously with joy, and it's not going to make it any better for you to be miserable. And I found that really helpful.
Oh, it's so good. Oh,
anyway,
I've
what
got
are you
three
thinking?
things to share.
Okay.
Right. First one. When I was a student chaplain, this was part of seminary field education, so I was a student hospital chaplain. I remember, and I'd forgotten about this till you just told that story there about that encounter with the doctors giving you advice. I encountered this woman who was in the dementia ward, and she really could not remember much from, recent times. And she's like, I have this pain in my stomach, but I don't know why. Oh, well, like, she wasn't too worried, but she's like, I had this pain. I found out later she'd had a hysterectomy a few days ago, but had no memory of it.
Interesting.
But what was really interesting is she was so free. Like,
yes,
I grew up in a family where it'd been like, oh, I hope it's okay. Is it getting infected? Like, you would worry about the surgery. Did they get it all? What's the prognosis? The doctor have a report? It was like a pain in her tummy, and she was unconcerned. And I thought, wow, that is it shows you how weird attitudes and thinking can be, because if you're relaxed, you'll actually heal better if you're positive, if instead of worrying. So to first anecdote there about the strange bit of embracing joy in the midst of suffering and illnesses and chronic conditions. Another is that at church, we're doing Sunday school, and we are reading through the Gospel of Mark, and it just reminded me, there's these curious bits in Mark chapter 2, and this is in the Christian New Testament, where the Pharisees and some of the other enemies of Jesus say, why are you and your disciples not fasting? Do you remember this? And Jesus
that's so good.
Like,
that's such a great
this is
example.
not the time for it. He
Right,
kind of gives a really strange, cryptic answer of like, well, you don't fast when the bridegroom's here. But then he doesn't really explain it. He's just like, and then he also does the bit of I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. But you could read those as saying, the rules are there and they're not bad, but there are times for joy too.
Right.
And I could see them, it could have been the question of, why are you playing board games when there's all these problems happening?
That's so good.
And along, this is really kind of a echo of the first point. Number 3, my top three comments in response. This is like a Dice Tower video. 3 comments to Daniel.
Number 3.
My third one is that when people are suffering, while they want empathy, but they also want some joy in their lives. So if there's something bad going on, they actually want to be around happy people, at least some. I mean, it depends on the person and the timing. And they also don't want to just be sick. They don't want to be categorized as sick or mourning. Or whatever. They actually would like people to talk about something else.
Yep.
And they might actually want you to tell jokes and laugh and have fun.
Yep.
So that they get to forget about their troubles. And maybe that's partly what he's getting at too, is that you don't always help people in problems by sitting around going, oh, this is the worst.
Right.
You know, joy can be infectious, and they need a little time of that. To help deal with the suffering, not to ignore it, but hopefully, like you're saying, to transform it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, it reminds you of a few other quotes too. That a quote that's kind of haunted me. I don't think there's absolute truth in this, but there's the sense like imagining a situation where a person's at the bottom of a pit, and they'll say, there is some value for saying, well, I'll be with you in that pit, I'll be with you in the midst of that suffering. But then I've also it's like, but rather than have someone be with me in the pit, I'd rather somebody be above the pit with a rope, that can pull me out of the pit,
right?
And so there's that, which is easier said than done, of course, often.
Sure.
But then we should. I'm excited to talk more about this in a future episode. Miroslav Volf, another theologian, has this book called The End of Memory, and I have not made it all the way through it, but he plays with this idea. Talking about the woman who has dementia, and the pain in the side, that in some ways we have, of course, we have to have memory. Of course, that's how we, in some ways, prevent suffering from happening again. That whole thing about, if you don't remember your history, you repeat it. And I believe that we have to commemorate and remember the atrocities and the pain and the suffering of the past. But on the other hand, but he also just talks about that memory is kind of what also keeps suffering alive for us too, and in some time, in some ways. And how do you balance those things out? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It reminds me of another great theological song, the Black Eyed Peas, "One Tribe, Y'all."
Here we go.
And I don't mean to use the word. I know the word tribe can be a little bit problematic. I'm just quoting the name of the song. It's just called "One Tribe, Y'all." But the chorus of "One Tribe, Y'all" is one tribe. It's one tribe, y'all. Let's catch amnesia. Let's catch amnesia. Forget about all that evil that they feed you. So this value of amnesia, of kind of
Yes.
letting go of, anyway, which again is easier said than done, and it's problematic in itself. But yes.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something else. Oh,
yes, let's go for it. I want to hear it.
Here we go.
This is like a ping pong game of ideas. I like it. Let's see what
Moltmann ping pong, go. It's to Moltmann's credit that he's hit on something so deep that we keep kind of thinking, connecting all these dots. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice, who died just in the past year or so, 2 years. But she made the comment, she was married for a very long time. She said, in a marriage, you have to be a little deaf, which is such a great idea in any type of long-term relationship, that you kind of have to just pretend you didn't hear something. By that, that we're all not at our best. And at times things are said, and you could either let them fester, or you can just pretend you never heard it. And I think that's such a great sort of idea of how you negotiate difficult times or stressful times, is that sometimes you just kind of, there's the memory, but you just set it aside, because otherwise that memory can ruin everything, really.
Right. And how can you hold on to the memories of the beautiful times and the positive times and give as much weight to them as the memories of the bad stuff? And hard stuff to figure out. May I make one last thing?
Ping pong.
Sorry.
Did you know that Moltmann's really good at ping pong, actually? He was going to go to the Olympics in 1958, I believe, and that was going to take place in the Antarctica Research Station.
That's right.
That was the 1 year. It was in the very northern hemisphere.
Yeah, no, exactly. I remember,
Yeah.
I had almost forgotten about that, but I
But he had
remember
toe
that in our
fungus. I
research.
think he had a toe fungus
did.
that prevented him.
He did.
From competing in the
There's
end.
talking about the Holy Grail of books. You can actually find a limited edition Moltmann ping pong T-shirt from that era like early. It says Moltmann ping pong forever, and if somebody out there could find it, it would be great. I'd love it.
And also, wait, what are creatures that molt?
Snakes molt, lizards
so
molt.
There's one I saw, a Moltmann ping pong T-shirt, and it had two snakes, and one says "Molt Man."
Oh,
like, molt
clever,
dude. Yeah,
clever.
Like
yeah,
one snake was saying to the other.
Yeah, I like it.
Moltmann, he didn't speak English, so he never got the joke. Actually, I don't know that. I just made that up. He never understood that joke. Unless in German it is molt, and then it would work. I don't know. What does that name mean?
Yeah.
Man is man, right?
Actually, I looked it up before this episode.
Oh, God, you're such a nerd.
But
I must look out the etymology of Moltmann.
I didn't have it, but I didn't find anything too definitive. But the one thing, just circling back to this critique of play, that why can't you be more productive? I do think that is a sign, which is another episode we need to do at some point, which is too big for this episode, of how much we are formed without even realizing it. Everyone in our world today, by the ethical system that comes out of the Industrial Revolution and what we might call, what's commonly called in the West, the Protestant work ethic. But this sense, and in some ways it's tied into the Protestant Reformation as well. But for the last 500 years, we've all been nurtured in the unspoken system of ethics that teaches us that our greatest value of being human beings is to be productive, right?
Right.
And that is the ultimate ethic. In fact, Moltmann refers to this as the morality of achievement, right? That is the ultimate measure of value and worth. Are we productive? Mm-hmm. Can we achieve? And that comes straight out of the Industrial Revolution. In some ways, it comes out of the Protestant Reformation. Ironically, because the whole idea behind the Protestant Reformation is we're not saved by grace. Well, we're not saved by works. We're saved by grace. Well, how do we know that we have grace? We're really productive.
Yeah.
And then that leads to...
You can't make this up, the ironies.
Yeah, that leads to, rampant excesses in capitalism. It leads, in some ways, it contributes to this ideology that was the underpinning of thinking that human slavery was okay. It just leads to all sorts of excesses and evils. This idea that our highest value is being productive. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I just lift that up as
in the words of the English poet William Wordsworth, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers, little in nature that is ours. So
oh my goodness.
It's all about getting and spending. We're actually losing the power of being human.
Oh, that's so good.
Because we reduced it to getting and spending.
That's so good.
Yeah. And unfortunately, even board games are corrupted by this because we get taken in by the latest game or an expansion or collection. So something that should be about play, I know it cuts like a knife, but it feels so wrong.
You're stepping on toes now, man.
I know. The cult of the new.
No, you're right.
Back this game. Back this game. Back
which I
this
think
game.
It's exactly a great point, which needs to be said, but I think also makes it important for us to say at this point that, in exploring this idea of play in games, Moltmann and others are really looking at it from a broader philosophical point of just the role of play in games in the human experience in general, not specifically, the second edition Kickstarter of, Brass Birmingham or whatever. But yeah.
Is there a new one?
No, but I wish.
Oh, that'd be so great.
Brass Birmingham Part 2.
Why is it called brass? Because you make brass? Because they were built. They're brass factories.
I don't remember any brass in the game.
They don't. It's the most enigmatic name. I think that's an AI generated title.
And maybe. So that's the first theme that you got from this, Kevin, was this idea of, is it, how moral is it for us to play in a world of suffering? Right. And then we come to second theme, right?
I hate it when it's theme 2 at 40 minutes. This is terrible. I'm at a decision point.
Yeah.
Do we keep going on the expedition, or do we take the loot back to headquarters?
Try to push our luck. Should we turn over the next card and see what it is?
It's just a push our luck moment. All right, let's go for it. I think we know it, Daniel.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right.
What's the second theme in these pages?
In the pages 1 through 14. Man, this is just pages 1 through 14. We're going to be talking about this book forever. So the second major theme that you identified so well in our show notes beforehand is this. Are games then, can games be, are games an instrument of oppression or freedom? And so this is what he's talking about. He says that given the systems of oppression that we live in, given the fact, as we've shared earlier, that Moltmann believes that ultimately all political revolutions and even theological reformations can lead us away from freedom toward greater oppression. He said, in those systems, games still exist, but games are used as tools of oppression. They are seen as what he calls kind of release valves of letting off steam so that we can get a little simulation of freedom and then go back to being cogs in the machine again, right?
Yes.
And so he says, and we encounter this all the time in our common language about games. We talk about games as well. We play games, we go on vacation, we take a Sabbath, we do all this stuff to recharge, right? We're recharging. We're letting off some steam. We're recharging our souls. We're doing this so that, why? That's the critical point that we never think about. Why? So that we can go back and be better workers again, right?
Yes.
So that we can go back and be more productive again. So that we can go back and be better cogs in the machine again, right?
And this is a deep theme of the grasshopper as well. The ant versus the grasshopper. The ant, you're supposed to be cogs in the machine, and the grasshopper, and games only exist to make you a better cog.
Exactly. They're not an
the
end to itself.
grasshopper's like, no, we are the game. Like, we play games. That's what we are.
Exactly. Are games a means to an end, or are they the end in and of themselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
So ancient Rome did this with the bread and circuses. Give the people food and fun, and then they won't rise up and rebel, or they'll be better workers.
Right.
So bread and circus, panem et circus, that's something.
Something. I think that's the Latin.
Panem et circenses. I think I just pulled a vocal cord.
Okay, I'm impressed. It sounds very erudite to me.
But interestingly, in the Hunger Games, the city there is called Panem, and she knowingly did that because in that movie and books, it's picking up on this theme that there's a competition that distracts everyone, that what can you survive the Hunger Games, and that makes them better workers to feed the riches of Panem.
Yep.
That's exactly what that book is about in some ways. So maybe games make us forget our misery or our own political power, that religion and games are the opiate of the people, as Karl Marx said about just religion, that it soothes us so that we just keep working.
Right, that is how the systems of oppression view games. They don't say that games are unimportant. They see games as ways of keeping us ultimately in service to the system, right? It reminded me also of Hunger Games is such a great example. I have played the game Trajan by Stefan Feld, a really great Stefan Feld game.
I've looked at that so many times.
There are
I don't have any Felds.
Yeah, no, they're good. Kristen, my wife, one of her top favorites is Castles of Burgundy. It's a great game. But anyway, there are, in that game, your population has 3 needs, and you have to meet these needs, or else you get punished. They are bread, food, religion, and games. Right, that you have, and so it very much that it's a game mechanism that replicates this view that games are useful only for helping the population let off steam and and thereby allowing them to return to the system to be helpful cogs in the machine. Mm-hmm. They're a means to an end. Mm-hmm. But Moltmann says that's not. Then Moltmann makes this interesting shift, and he says, even thinking that games are important for allowing us to release steam is better than thinking games are unimportant at all. But he says they're more than that. He said they're important for more than that. And then he makes the shift that you were just talking about that Bernard Suits makes in The Grasshopper, which we've talked about in earlier episodes, if listeners want to go back and look for those episodes. Book Club. Where he says, as Bernard Suits says, Jürgen Moltmann says in his own way, games are not at their best. At their best, games are not means to an end. They are meant to be the end, right? Mm-hmm. That we don't play games to empower us to return to the system and be more productive. We play games because that's the meaning of life, right? That's why we're created. That's why we're here, is to rejoice and delight in life and in each other and in God. And he said, so that's what he says. He says that games at their best. Oh, I love this. Do you mind if I connect? Okay. So a couple things. One, he says real revolution, real reformation, real changing society will not begin by changing how we work, but by changing how we play. Right? And that's how real change in the world happens, by changing how we play. And what he says then is that games at their best allow us to envision a better future. Are you
talking Moltmann or Suits here?
Moltmann. I'm sorry.
Moltmann,
yeah. Moltmann says that games that are about the past or present are, and I don't mean thematically, but basically what they help us to process, like that, are games in service to the system, right? In service to the society. They're the steam valves. But games at their most purest form, what they were intended to be, are games about the future. He said that the best games, the reason games exist, are to help us envision a better future.
Yeah.
And I
asked, is that Moltmann or Suits? Because Suits is getting at that as well. That in the utopia or in the future, that these are all ideas of anticipation. That so when we play a game, we're anticipating a future reality, which is also a very Christian theme in terms of the Last Supper, the Lord's Supper, Holy Communion, Eucharist, different names. But the idea that that's an anticipation. So when we do this, we're anticipating this future where this is fully realized.
Yes.
And so there's a bit, so we're at a table as well. And that works for games, that we are liberated beings of creation and we should be acting more like it, which means we should be playing. And so, that's really, there's your sacramental bit, right? Like when you play a game, you're becoming the grasshopper, which is being this redeemed creature. Yeah.
And listen to the language of Holy Communion, the Lord's Supper, Eucharist, this tradition in the Christian tradition. You're right. It happens at a table, right? It brings people together. And what does Jesus say? Jesus says, well, this bit represents this, right?
Right.
And this bit represents that, and
oh wait,
I mean, it's
oh my gosh,
it's like this sacred holy game, right? Whereas we would say, this meeple represents this worker. He's saying, well, this bread represents my body, right?
Now, there are some Christian debates about whether it whether it is a symbol or it really is. But even if you say it really has become Christ's body, as Catholic teaching would say, it still has this weird double thing of it still looks and tastes like bread, but it also has this deeper thing.
Right.
So you still can make the argument that it is kind of like a meeple in the sense that it's still
an abstraction.
It's still a little wafer of bread.
Yeah. It's an abstraction.
To the senses. It still tastes like bread. It doesn't, the outer bit of it doesn't become Christ's body.
Right. To our senses, it's an abstraction of a larger reality, which is ultimately what we see in games too. They're an abstraction of reality.
We're going to have to do Board Game Faith the book.
We got to do
That's the last bit of it.
Oh, that's the last chapter?
Then we could go on an archaeological dig to ancient, or to Israel now, Palestine, but do an ancient dig. And not only will I find the wizard that turns me into Shazam, but we'll also find an earlier copy of the Gospel of Mark, which with the bit has left out where there were dice at the Last Supper, and we you know,
I like it.
then we become Lord Emperors, and Daniel turns into a giant worm. This is I'm riffing on Dune. He becomes a god emperor, and I'm just sort of chilling in a cave. So with air conditioning, it has air conditioning.
It has to have air conditioning. Yeah, I
geothermal.
I would say I think we need to find grant funding for this dig, and we'll.
I don't think any of that's unrealistic.
No.
Gospel of Mark, book or chapter 14, missing verse 5a.
Yeah. I like it. And ancient meeples.
Should be
made out of sheep knuckle bone. No, do sheep even have knuckles? I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
I had to look that up. When they call it that, it's really the ankle bone.
Oh, okay.
It's the bit from the ankle, because I guess it's naturally a polygon.
Really?
Including even the human ankle. So they sometimes call it a knuckle bone, but it's really the ankle. I don't know.
Wow.
Biology is,
we're just fumbling in the dark.
They're always coming up with stuff with exceptions and misnaming things. So
yeah.
I don't trust them at all.
So Kevin, if Moltmann is right, that games are an anticipation of the future and help us to envision a better future, where have you and I experienced that, individually or together? But can we reflect on experiences we've had where playing a game maybe gives us a glimpse of a better future? Or do we know of experiences like that, whether we personally had it or not?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want to put you on the spot.
These are going to feel generic, but one is when you see somebody, it could be yourself or someone else, really do well at a game and they've grown and gotten better. I think that is really exciting. It's personal growth, right?
Yeah.
Like I all of a sudden they have mastered the game. So I think that's an anticipation of just
personal growth,
obstacle and success. So that, but then probably why we all play games is just that magical esprit de corps when everyone's invested in a game and it's immensely fun. And while you've got to want to win, in some ways that's not the point anymore. Like you're almost curious to see who wins the game, and you want to win, but you're not going to get angry and flip the table. You're just so invested in it. You just really want to know how it comes out. It's almost like in some games where you have the reveal, the final bit of, let's see who had the most points.
We've abandoned our desire to put our own personal win as the ultimate measure of
but you've created this thing, like you've been on this journey, you've worked hard, and it's just this magic, and you're not thinking about tomorrow or dinner or whatever. At that moment, you're what happens next. And you can get that in a movie, but it's not real life. It's not right. You can talk about it later, like, wasn't that a great part in this movie? And you're all together, but you weren't really together. At a game table, you built it yourself. It's like building a house.
And isn't that a great future
next?
to envision?
I love that.
And
then you're like, yay, Elliot won. Or like, that was a good win. And everyone's sort of excited. You're like John the Baptist. Yay.
We're personal
there's
win.
Someone greater than I.
That's right. I love that. I love that. That's so good. The sense that it envisions a future where personal victory isn't the ultimate measure of.
Right. But there is some of it. Yeah, you do want to win.
Sure.
Because otherwise it's not a game. So there's a little bit of investment.
But it's not the ultimate measure.
You can also be like, you know what? I lost. It's a game. Who cares?
Exactly.
Let's go for pizza.
Because, truthfully, a lot of suffering is created in the world today by the attitude that I must win at all costs. No matter what, I'm going to win. And that creates suffering.
And recent playthrough, and I've shared this with you outside of this moment, but playing John Company Second Edition, my favorite game of all time right now.
Wow.
Even beating out Root and
Wow.
Cole Worley. I hate you. You're so great.
That's
but
high praise.
Playing John Company Second Edition, one of my kids attempted to bankrupt the company by taking on all this debt, but against his plans, we ended up doing really well, and he couldn't bankrupt the company. He took out so much debt, but ended up doing really well. Like, we were just oozing money out of every pore.
That's great.
So even
that's
his
great.
goal, like, I'm going to bankrupt the company, win the game itself defeated that. And it just became hilarious because he told us, like, I'm going to try to bankrupt it. And he couldn't.
That's so great. That's so great. That's a nice anticipated future too, where even to our best efforts, things work out well. Yeah, despite our best efforts.
Your goal was thwarted for a transformed goal of this moment of hilarity, which
awesome.
We just made 50 pounds.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
No, my main ones are, again, this nothing groundbreaking. Things we've talked about before, but I have listeners of this podcast have heard me say multiple times before that the reason I fell in love with the spiritual benefits of gaming was, and became intrigued by it, was this initial observation that I've seen in all of our church board game groups, and both of the church board game groups that I've involved in, just how it brings together such a diversity of people, just that, and I've said this again and again, and I apologize for those you weren't to say before, but senior citizens and college students, every age in between, Republicans, Democrats, singles, married, gay, straight, different racial, ethnic backgrounds, and different parts of humanity that almost would never get together in any other circumstance. But by golly, we get around the game table together, and we love each other around the game table. And I think that's an anticipation of a preferred future. That's an anticipation of how we could be. The other thing that reminds me of, in terms of anticipated preferred future, Moltmann talks about being free from fear, how play in games free us from fear. If I'm being honest, I live a lot of my life out of fear. I mean, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better at that, but there are different times of my life where I'm afraid of various things. He got me thinking about
You're
this.
not alone.
Well, thanks. I can't remember a moment where I am simultaneously playing a game and am afraid of life, and I don't think I would have realized that without Moltmann, but he's right. In those moments, it does give me a glimpse of a better future where I'm not afraid of life, where I just, I can't remember simultaneously playing a game and still obsessing, and at the same time obsessing over the fears of life that I obsess about outside of games.
Right.
And I thought that was, and anyway, I got that from
freedom
Moltmann
to
too.
not be afraid.
Yeah.
It's almost like a purgation or a substitution, right? So you're afraid you might lose the game or not play well, but of course that it's just a game. Like if you can keep that paradox in your head, that becomes a substitution for the real fears.
Right.
And it helps. Then you get a chance to say, hey, I wasn't afraid. So in real life, and that felt pretty good.
Yeah. Anyway. Boy.
That's awesome. Wow.
That's the first 14 pages of Jürgen Moltmann's Theology of Play.
You're the best, man.
Oh,
wow,
you
that
are.
was awesome. I learned so much.
Well, ditto. Back
I'm
at
going to
you.
take notes on our notes.
Well, you got together some great notes, and I love how you distilled these 14 pages down to two major themes. That was very helpful.
Well, a lot of those
our
notes
conversation.
were yours. I had some notes, and I did try to do a framework, but a lot of this, and I've read this so many times and struggled it. And I'm like,
I have too.
Daniel's picked up on this thing, and that's exactly what he is saying, because he has to say it in a backwards way. Moltmann does, and Daniel turns it around.
Yeah. Well, you're very
Moltmann,
you're kind.
ping pong Moltmann with his cart in front of the horse, and Daniel's like, no, sir. We put the cart after the horse.
Now
it makes sense.
You're very gracious and
anyway,
kind. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody. Great episode, and check us out. We are on YouTube, and we are on audio platforms. Subscribe, like us, etc. And remember the contest, and remember our newsletter.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for listening. We love you. You're an important part of our Board Game Faith family. You rock, and we are so grateful that you have included us as a part of your day. And we hope the rest of your day is great.
Daniel, clap technology disengaged. Bye.
Bye.
And I didn't cue up the music. So I'll drop it in here. Wow, wow, wow.